Hello?
Today, we will be talking about the horrific case of Denise Amber Lee, wife and mother of two. On January 17, 2008, 21-year-old Denise Lee was kidnapped from her home by an unknown assailant. Just days later, Denise's body was found with evidence of rape and a fatal gunshot wound to her head. But what happened to her? This is the case of Denise Amber Lee. Welcome back to True Murder Cases. We send our condolences to the Lee family and friends. Denise was born August 6, 1986, to Sue and Sergeant Rick Goff. She lived in her childhood home in Inglewood, Florida, and attended the local high school where she met her soon-to-be husband, Nathan Lee. Denise and Nathan began dating in their senior year of high school. She was a math whiz and a bookwork, while Nathan was a football jock and school jokester. The pair married not long after graduation and in no time began building their family in Northport, Florida. Denise was a stay-at-home mom, caring for their two boys while Nathan worked 3 jobs to support the family of 4. In 2008, Denise and Nathan spent their first Valentine's Day together. While finances were tight, Nathan was able to buy Denise a heart-shaped ring to gift her on their special day. Nathan noted that Denise never took this ring off. That was until the heart-shaped ring became incriminating evidence that led to the arrest of Denise's murderer. On the morning of January 17th, Nathan Lee left for work just like any other morning. Denise was home alone with her 2 boys. At 11 a.m., Nathan called Denise to check in. She was cutting their son Noah's hair outside on the back porch. Everything seemed fine until later that afternoon. Nathan called Denise again on his way home from work, but this time received no answer. He arrived home around 3:30 p.m. to find Denise gone, nowhere to be found in the home. Noah and his brother were found in the same crib, which only further alarmed Nathan. Upon searching the home, Nathan didn't find anything out of place. All of Denise's belongings were still there, so she hadn't left to go somewhere. There weren't any signs of forced entry, and the front door was even locked when Nathan came home. There wasn't a hair out of place. Where did Denise go?
Northport Emergency.
Yes, I'm at 7912 Latour Avenue. I just got home from work and my wife, I can't find her. My kids were in the house and I don't know where she is. I've looked every single place.
Panic-stricken, Nathan's next call was to Denise's father, Rick Goff, who was a detective in Northport, Florida, where Denise and Nathan lived. Within the half hour, Rick quickly put together a search effort. Resources such as K-9 units and helicopters were implemented to search the immediate area. Nathan, Rick, and other officers began knocking on neighbors' doors, inquiring whether or not they'd seen Denise or noticed anything unusual about the Lee residence. Thankfully, one neighbor did know something. Roughly an hour before Nathan returned home, Jennifer Eckert reported having seen a white male driving a green Chevy Camaro. They said the driver circled the street 4 or 5 times before pulling into the driveway of the home. When Jennifer walked outside, she saw the Camaro driving away but did not see Denise in the car. Not thinking much of it, Jennifer didn't call to report the suspicious activity. At approximately 6:14 in the evening, the same day, the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office gained a new lead on Denise's whereabouts. Denise did not identify herself initially, but it sounded as if she was talking to a male in the room and not directly to the operator. Before the call was terminated, Denise was able to let the operator know who she was. Denise also managed to provide additional incriminating information, such as she was being held against her will by a man she did not know. The phone number was tracked back to 36-year-old Michael King, an unemployed plumber. Detectives now believe King to be their person of interest. King also lived in Northport, not all that far from Denise and Nathan. King was unemployed, going through a divorce, and facing a possible foreclosure on his home at the time of Denise's kidnapping. Reports show that King took Denise back to his home where he tied her up with duct tape and repeatedly forced himself on her, actually. But when officers were dispatched to the home after the chilling 911 call, neither King nor Denise were to be found. King had a cousin living nearby, Harold Muxlow. King drove to Harold's home and asked if he could borrow a shovel, a can of gasoline, and a flashlight. King said that he had gotten his lawnmower stuck in the front yard and needed to get it out. Without a second thought, Harold gathered the supplies and handed them off to his cousin. But before King could get the things back into his car, Denise got out of the car and shouted, "Call the police." When questioned, King told his cousin there was nothing to worry about. King forced Denise back into the car and drove off. At this point, one can only ask, why hadn't Harold called the police right then? During the struggle to get Denise back inside the Camaro, she somehow managed to steal King's phone off his person. This was when she made the 911 call that came in at 6:14 p.m. Unknowingly, the Sarasota 911 dispatcher sent officers to the wrong address. King and Denise were long gone from the residence by the time officers arrived. After King had driven off, Harold got into his car and drove over to King's residence. He wanted to see if the lawnmower was actually stuck in the front yard or not, and when it wasn't, Harold placed an anonymous call to 911 giving a description of his cousin's green Camaro and told the dispatcher that he suspected a woman was inside, being held against her will. Sabrina Muxlow, Harold's 17-year-old daughter, was instructed to call 911 at 6:23 p.m. to report the incident her father had witnessed. She told the dispatcher that her father had seen a woman tied up in the back of King's car. Sabrina also told the dispatcher that her father's cousin was driving a green Chevy Camaro. Harold told officers that when he looked back towards the car, he could see King crawling over the center console inside the vehicle and pushing the head of a woman, Denise, back down in the back seat. He saw the woman's knees rise up through the window. This would make the third 911 call being made regarding the case of Denise Lee. 7 minutes later, a fourth call came through. Jane Kowalski was stopped at a traffic light on Highway 41 when she heard a woman screaming. Jane described the screaming as high-pitched and was unlike any type of scream I'd ever heard in my entire life. But the police never came. Originally, Jane had been on the phone with her sister when the screaming started. The noise was so loud that even Jane's sister could hear it on the other end of the phone call. At first, Jane thought it could have been a child screaming for help, but she soon came to realize that it was coming from the car next to her. When she looked across, Jane made eye contact with King. Jane reports seeing King pushing something down in the back seat of his car. She also reports that when he did that, a hand appeared coming up from the back seat. It started slapping on the window with enough force that Jane could hear it in her own car. When the traffic light flickered to green, Jane didn't immediately take off. She hoped that the man next to her would drive forward so that she could see the license plate number. But when King didn't drive forward as she had hoped, she began moving slowly. Once there was enough room, King switched lanes and pulled up behind Jane. This is when she called 911 to report the scream she had heard coming from the car and also gave a description of the green Camaro. Jane told the 911 dispatcher that she could see the driver changing lanes before taking a left turn onto Toledo Blade Boulevard. King was heading towards Interstate 75 and Jane was unable to follow him any further. Around 9 p.m. in the evening, Deputy Christian Weimer and Florida State Trooper Edward Pope were posted on Toledo Blade Boulevard near the on-ramp for Interstate 75. The officers were on the lookout for King's Camaro. They were supplied with the description of the car and the license plate number. At approximately 15 past the hour, the officers spotted the Camaro driving from Toledo Blade Boulevard towards the on-ramp for Interstate 75 southbound. The officers followed the car and forced King to pull over. The officers proceeded towards the car cautiously. Before making contact with King, they peered into the back windows of the Camaro and spotted a muddy shovel lying on the back seat where Denise had been tied up just hours before. The officers demanded King exit the vehicle several times to no avail. King only exited the Camaro when the officers threatened to pull their firearms and use deadly force to remove him from the vehicle. When King finally exited, he got out of the car from the front door backward. Without wasting another second, the officers put King in handcuffs and began the arresting process. In King's pocket, the officers found the phone that Denise used to make the earlier 911 call, but the battery and SIM card had both been removed. Officers also noted that King was wet from the waist all down to his feet. His shoes were caked in slick mud. King was placed under arrest and was charged with the kidnapping of Denise Lee. He refused any involvement and did not supply detectives with any information on Denise's current whereabouts. The following day, Jane Kowalski was watching the news when a picture of Michael King's mugshot appeared on the screen. She immediately recognized King as the man in the green car from the night prior. Jane contacted the authorities and identified herself as one of the 911 callers regarding the green Camaro and Denise's kidnapping. To Jane's surprise, the authorities had no clue who she was or what she was talking about. It was later revealed that Jane's 911 call was never relayed through the proper channels, and officers in the area were never notified of what happened. The operator claimed to have loudly requested units to be sent out to the location, but the two dispatchers who failed to relay the information blamed shift changes and a chaotic environment for the call having slipped through the cracks. As a result of this oversight, both dispatchers were forced into suspension without pay. Sheriff John Davenport of Charlotte County decided not to fire the two dispatchers. The sheriff referred to the oversight as a missed opportunity, and Denise's father, Rick, refused to see this as an acceptable outcome. It was also later revealed that a deputy was already stationed on the exact road King turned onto while Jane was still on the phone with 911. Had the dispatchers done their job and due diligence, Denise Lee may still be with her family today. Police continued to search for Denise in the days following King's arrest. On January 19th, a member of one of the search parties spotted an area of land near Plantation Boulevard in Northport where the dirt had been disturbed. At an approximate depth of 3 feet 1 inch, officers discovered the naked body of Denise Lee. She was found in a shallow grave, lying on her side in the fetal position. Denise was found less than 5 miles from where Jane had originally phoned 911. According to medical examiners, Denise sustained a significant deadly head injury from a firearm. Her cause of death was ruled as a gunshot to the head. The wound found to the right of the right eyebrow was consistent with a gun having been placed on her head before being fired. According to the medical examination, the examiner believes that when the gun was discharged, Denise's right eye exploded from trauma. The report also states that there was aspirated blood in Denise's lungs, which indicated that Denise continued to breathe for a short period of time after the firearm was discharged. There were also bruises on Denise's left and right wrist. The bruising was in the same location on either side, which led the medical examiner to speculate that they may have been caused by ligatures and were consistent with self-defense injuries. Further into the medical examiner's report, it was found that Denise had vaginal bruising and tearing, both of which were likely caused by forceful insertion trauma. Michael King's charges now included first-degree murder alongside kidnapping charges. King pleaded guilty to neither. The prosecution had a very strong case against King. They had several witnesses who saw King the day Denise went missing, from the neighbor who saw him in the Lee's driveway to Jane and other drivers who saw him on the roadway pushing something down in the backseat of the Camaro. King's cousin, Harold, also testified against King on behalf of the prosecution. But in the end, it was the evidence that Denise left behind that truly sealed King's fate. The officers who surveyed the crime scene found a pair of Nathan's boxers just a couple hundred yards away from where Denise's body was found. Denise sometimes liked to wear Nathan's boxer shorts, and she had happened to be wearing a pair on the day of her kidnapping. When tested for DNA, crime scene analysts found sperm cells on the fabric. The cells matched the DNA profile of Michael King. Inside the Camaro, police found Denise's ring and several strands of her hair that had been pulled out. Detectives believe that Denise pulled her own hair out and hid her ring inside the car to leave evidence behind. Her palm print was also found on the outside of the driver's side window. Upon further searches, King's house provided even more proof of the crime he committed. Duct tape that was used to tie Denise was found with strands of her hair attached. King's defense could only focus on the gunshot that killed Denise. Their argument was that it couldn't have been King because the firearm was never found. According to King's defense, no murder weapon meant that King was not guilty. On December 4th, 2009, the jury deliberated for just 2 hours before having made a final decision. They found Michael guilty of first-degree murder, involuntary sexual battery, and kidnapping. The jury voted 12-0 on all charges and was in favor of sentencing King to death. The judge accepted, and King was sentenced to death by Florida Rule of Criminal Procedure 3.851. His lawyer petitioned for an appeal of King's sentence but was denied. King is still presently detained and awaiting his execution. Shortly after the death of his wife, Nathan created the Denise Amber Lee Foundation in honor of Denise in June of 2008. Research revealed that there were issues nationwide in the handling of the 911 system. The foundation acted as a non-profit organization with a mission to promote and support public safety through uniform training, standardized protocols, defined measurable outcomes, and technological advances in the 911 system. The foundation promotes better training for 911 operators across the country in hopes of saving lives that may have otherwise fallen through the cracks of missed opportunities. Denise's father helped to get the Denise Amber Lee Act signed into law, and it was passed unanimously by the Florida legislature. The act provides training for 911 operatives who volunteer. The passage of the act continues in state law. Nathan and Rick are continuing to fight for better, mandatory training for all 911 operators to this day. Despite Denise's ferocious fighting and bravery to save her own life, she was ultimately let down by the 911 operators and dispatchers that day. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to True Murder Cases because that makes this video possible, and click on the left to see another one you might enjoy.